Hello everybody and welcome to a new YouTube video. In this video, I'm so excited to take you through the process of my new A3 watercolor painting. In this video, I'm going to show you how I planned the sketch. I found references from the game and basically how I used watercolor to paint one of my favorite locations in the game from Greenpath. The first thing I did was I loosened up my hand and basically the muscles in my hand for sketching. This is a recent addition to my painting process or my drawing process. I recently got this really cheap warm-up sketchbook specifically for being able to warm up my handstands. This book is not necessarily meant for improving my drawing skills or learning something new. It is essentially just for warming up my hand muscles before I begin drawing on a final painting. Do you know that feeling where when you haven't written after a long time and suddenly when you try to write, it feels like your handwriting is so untidy? It's similar with drawing. After many weeks maybe of not actually drawing, since I do a lot more painting in my sketchbook, after that when I try to sit down to draw, it feels like I can't draw. So the warm-up sketchbook is my new experiment to see how I can improve my hand-eye coordination and loosen up my muscles and be able to draw smoother curves and straighter lines. After warming up, I started sketching my usual grid onto the A3 paper. I stuck this 300 GSM cotton paper, which is now my favorite surface to paint on my wooden easel using some washi tape. I use a regular HB pencil and I divide the paper into thirds. This is to help me create a more interesting composition and weigh each object in the painting in relation to another object. And then I just draw simple shapes, circles, triangles, straight lines, and this is where the warm-up exercise previously really helps. The main part I want to paint in this painting is obviously the Hollow Knight on the bench. This is one of my favorite benches from Greenpath from the game, and I love the design of the lamp and the little rocks in the background with the spirals on them. So I definitely had to include those things, and the moss fly, which is my favorite creature from possibly the entire game. And then I started doing a color composition. Because I don't use watercolor very often, I felt like I needed to first test out a few colors to see which one I felt looked the best together, combinations of colors, as well as what technique I would use to apply the colors and make it look like Greenpath, basically capture the essence of my favorite location in the video game, Greenpath. Another thing I enjoy using my sketchbook for now is for problem solving, such as how was I going to paint the lamppost using watercolor and what colors was I going to use. I did an experiment of that in my sketchbook. Because watercolor is a very transparent medium, unfortunately as soon as I do the sketch I have to erase the sketch just so that there are very light lines left behind, because I don't want any pencil lines to be left behind and peeking through the paint. Then I applied some masking tape onto the areas that I want basically to be very bright and highlighted. And the bamboo paper, the little A5 size bamboo paper, is going to be used for swatching the colors before I apply it to the final painting. I have the natural habit to swatch a color before using it in a painting, and for the purpose of this painting I want to also see how I can keep information about the colors I used and the amount of that color that was used in the final painting. And I just think looking at them together, it's like the color palette and the final painting together, it feels like it completes the painting, and I like looking at it. The paint I used is super fine granulating paint from Daniel Smith. Specifically, I used the Nicholas Lopez set and the Jean Haynes set. I love the greens, the Green with Envy set, and I was experimenting with it. I really love the phthalo green from there. I'm using my normal brush that I also use for my gouache paintings, which is my round brush 10, and it was so satisfying to work on this wet layer. Watercolor is basically about layering many times, and that's something I'm not very used to compared to gouache, but I found this process very enjoyable, especially the first few layers, working on a very wet layer, like working back and forth with paint and water and my spray bottle. I found it very enjoyable. The way the paint granulated and spread across the paper was so satisfying to watch. The only thing is, I didn't have sufficient patience to wait for the layer to dry, so I used a blow dryer, and it worked fine. I saw some other artists doing that, so I decided I'm going to do that because I wanted to go on with the painting and I couldn't wait. This is also my first time trying out a lot of the techniques that I used in this video. I watched a bunch of tutorials using watercolor. Because I use gouache more often, watercolor is a big shift, especially because of the transparency of the medium, and how many layers you have to apply, and the fact that it's less forgiving than gouache. Because of how opaque it is, you can just paint another color over it. But I was still finding the process with watercolor quite enjoyable, and I think it was the correct choice for this painting because I wanted this painting to feel the way the game does. The soft lighting and the background kind of blurring in the distance, and I felt watercolor was just the perfect medium to do this with. And once that second layer was done, I started to go in with ultramarine blue and some Luna blue from the Nicholas Lopez set, and I'm still working very transparently. I started painting in the rocks that we see in the game in the distance. It's one of my favorite things to look at while playing this game. I did find it a little bit challenging working from light to dark to paint elements of a background, but it was still very satisfying, enjoyable, and fun. Then I slowly started making my way to the foreground, and I think the most challenging part of this painting was definitely the pebbled pathway. When I was drawing the pathway, I had a specific look for it in my mind, which was rounded pebbles with a very 2D cartoonish type of lighting wherever the light would hit it. But as I was trying to paint that, I was really struggling. You can see I went back and forth, left it for a bit and painted something else, and I was struggling with the pebbled pathway, and I ended up changing it many times. I couldn't decide where the shadow should go, so I worked on it a little bit offline during the night, and something about painting at the night just makes me feel more patient and calm to work on something that's challenging. And this is what it looks like on day 2. I think it is an improvement on what it looked like, and instead of making painting them like what I initially imagined as rounded pebble stones or paved stones, I ended up drawing them kind of squarish. And then I went straight on starting painting the parts that were taped out with the masking fluid, like the Hollow Knight and the lamppost. This was one of the satisfying things to paint. The lamppost was always my favorite thing to paint. I've done some other paintings of this game on different locations. I've painted Greenpath, I've painted Fungal Wastes and City of Tears, but they were all direct screenshots from the game in a 2D way. I've never painted the game on an A3 size before with more of a 3D composition. So in the lamppost, I used masking fluid to cover up the little glowing bug that's in the lamp, and once that was dry, I just took my lightest color, which I wanted to be the highlight on the lamppost leg, the metal part of the lamppost. This color was a mixture of phthalo green and ultramarine blue, which gave this very nice, this is the perfect color for Greenpath in my opinion. And I just covered the surface of the metal parts of the lamppost here, and once that dried, I slowly layered the shadows to make the lamppost more detailed and dark and look more like it's the focal point. I used a violet with some ultramarine blue and lamp black watercolor for painting the Hollow Knight's cloak. Instead of painting it a 2D oval shape, I wanted to show some strands of the fabric. Painting the bench was also a challenge, but I enjoyed this a lot more. I used the same approach as the lamppost. I painted a light color, which is the phthalo green and the ultramarine blue, and then as that dried, I layered it with darker colors to give the look of metal. To make the bulb of the lamppost look like it's glowing, I used some ultramarine blue and phthalo green and watered it down a lot and created a little gradient towards the glowing bug. And then I used lamp black directly from the tube to paint the darkest parts of the metal and some outlines and the Hollow Knight's eyes. A really satisfying thing that I noticed I enjoy painting with watercolor is shadows or indicating volume and shape on especially a circular shape like the Hollow Knight's head in this painting. I really enjoyed making him look 3D and indicating the light source. Then I started painting the moss fly, which was also challenging because I wanted it to look true to the game but not completely 2D, a little bit more of my own stylized touch. One of the things that makes the game background so beautiful in my opinion are the little glowing dots, different colors that move around in the background, so I had to include them here. I used white watercolor and yellow watercolor to make it look a little bit transparent like it is in the game, like an optical illusion, and I think that gave the effect that I wanted it to give, like the way it looks in the video game. As all the layers slowly dried, I started putting some darker foreground elements and making the painting more full. So I started adding some of those hanging plants that's from Greenpath and adding more details of the leaves in the background and details on the rocks. And yeah, this was the best part. Even the little grass and vines coming out from the cracks of the pavement. That was the details are the best things I enjoy painting. And then as a final touch, I used some white gouache to create this striking rim light coming from directly above onto the scene, on the bench, on the lamppost, and on the Hollow Knight's head, and also a bit on the moss fly. And after 3 days of painting and experimenting, I finally finished the painting, and I really enjoyed this experiment with watercolor. It was a nice refresh from my usual painting with gouache. And if you watched this far, thank you so much for watching. I hope you enjoyed watching this process. You can find an unedited hour-long version of this video on my Patreon along with other process videos. And because of copyright reasons, I cannot sell prints of this painting, but the original will be for sale on my shop. If you made it this far into the video, let me know in the comments which do you prefer, watercolor or gouache, and why. Gouache is still my favorite medium, despite trying out watercolor recently and enjoying it, but for me nothing can beat the satisfaction of painting with gouache right now. Happy holidays, and I hope you have a wonderful New Year celebration. Thank you for watching, and I'll see you in the next video.